The Dearborn assembly plant hummed with the rhythm Robert Mitchell had perfected over 18 years. At 5:47 a.m., Rob walked through the double doors into a cathedral of steel and purpose where F-150s rolled off the line like clockwork prayers. The morning shift was already in motion. Danny Kowalski adjusting tolerances on Station 7, Maria Santos running quality checks, Tyler Jackson learning the intricate dance of door panel installation under Rob's watchful eye. Rob wasn't management in the traditional sense. His business cards read Senior Plant Manager, but to the 847 workers on the floor, he was something more valuable, the guy who made things work. While other plants struggled with efficiency ratings, Dearborn consistently hit 97% on-time delivery. While other facilities battled safety violations, Rob's operation hadn't seen a reportable incident in 14 months. "Morning, boss," Tyler called out, wrestling with a stubborn mounting bracket. The kid was 24, single father, community college graduate who'd started as a temp and earned his way into the apprentice program through pure grit. Rob had taken him under his wing the way Danny Kowalski had once mentored him. "Let me show you something," Rob said, approaching Tyler's station. He grabbed the bracket, rotated it 15 degrees, and it slid into place effortlessly. "See how the engineer drew this? Makes sense on paper. But the guy who designed it never stood here for 8 hours trying to install 100 of these. So we adapted." Tyler nodded, understanding immediately. That was Rob's philosophy. Respect the design but honor the reality. His 18 years had taught him that the best solutions came from the intersection of engineering theory and calloused hands. The plant's success wasn't accidental. Rob had studied lean manufacturing principles during Ford's collaboration with Toyota in the 80s, then refined them through Marine Corps logistics training from his pre-Ford days. He'd implemented a hybrid system that maximized efficiency without sacrificing worker dignity, a balance most MBA consultants never figured out. Danny Kowalski, a Vietnam vet with 32 years on the line, often said Rob was the best manager he'd worked under. "Kid understands that you can't run a plant from a spreadsheet," Danny would tell anyone who'd listen. "You run it from right here, watching the work, knowing your people." At 7:15, Rob's radio crackled. "Rob, conference room. Now." The voice belonged to Chuck Peterson, Regional Operations Director, and it carried an edge Rob hadn't heard before. Walking toward the administrative wing, Rob mentally reviewed the numbers. Production was up 3% over last quarter. Quality ratings were the highest in the region. Worker satisfaction surveys showed 89% approval, nearly unheard of in manufacturing. Whatever Chuck wanted, it wasn't about performance. The conference room overlooked the production floor through floor-to-ceiling windows. Chuck Peterson stood with his back to the door, watching the line move with mechanical precision. Beside him sat a younger man in a navy suit, iPhone and leather portfolio arranged on the table with military precision. "Rob, meet Marcus Webb," Chuck said without turning around. "He's your new plant director." Rob felt the words like a physical impact. Plant director meant Marcus would be his boss. Rob had been passed over for promotion again, despite his track record, despite his results, despite 18 years of service. Marcus stood up, extending a manicured hand. "Robert, I've heard great things. Looking forward to working together." His smile was perfect, practiced, corporate, empty. "It's Rob," he replied, shaking the offered hand. Marcus's grip was firm but soft, the handshake of someone who'd never held a wrench for 8 hours straight. "Marcus comes to us from McKinsey," Chuck explained. 2 years of operational consulting, MBA from Kellogg. Ford brought him in to modernize our processes, improve efficiency metrics. Rob's jaw tightened. He'd improved efficiency every year for the past decade. His processes were already lean, already optimized. But he knew better than to argue. "Not yet. I'm excited to dive in," Marcus said, settling back into his chair. "I've reviewed the preliminary data. There's definitely room for improvement. Some of these legacy procedures seem unnecessarily complex." Legacy procedures. Rob had written most of those procedures himself, each one earned through trial and error, each one preventing the kinds of mistakes that cost money and endangered workers. "What specifically?" Rob asked. Marcus consulted his tablet. "Well, for instance, the 17-step quality checkpoint sequence for electrical systems. Industry standard is 9 steps. We're essentially doubling our inspection time for marginal benefit." Rob leaned forward. "Those 8 extra steps catch problems that would cost us $50,000 per recall incident. Last year alone, they prevented—" "I understand the historical context," Marcus interrupted smoothly. "But we need to think strategically about resource allocation. Every minute spent on redundant checks is a minute not spent on productive output. Chuck Peterson nodded approvingly. Rob realized this wasn't a discussion. It was a briefing. Decisions had already been made. "When do you start?" Rob asked. "I started yesterday," Marcus smiled. "I've already scheduled department reviews for next week. Looking forward to streamlining operations." Walking out, Rob passed the corner office with windows. Empty, glass reflecting his tired face. Marcus Webb's first week as plant director unfolded like a masterclass in corporate disruption. He scheduled back-to-back meetings with department heads, armed with PowerPoint presentations full of efficiency matrices and productivity optimization charts. His office, the corner space Rob had expected to inherit, filled with monitors displaying real-time metrics, KPI dashboards, and what Marcus called performance visualization tools. Rob watched it all unfold with growing unease. Marcus wasn't malicious, exactly. He was something potentially worse, confident in his ignorance. "We need to talk about your safety protocols," Marcus announced during their Monday morning meeting. He'd summoned Rob to his office, summoned like a schoolboy called to the principal, and had spreadsheets arrayed across his desk. "What about them? They're excessive. Look at this data." Marcus spun his laptop around. "Our time per unit is 12% higher than the Flat Rock plant. Most of that differential comes from what you call safety windows, mandatory pauses between operations." Rob studied the screen. Flat Rock's numbers were indeed faster, but he knew something Marcus didn't. Flat Rock had also reported 3 lost time injuries in the past quarter, including a worker who'd lost 2 fingers to a stamping press. "Those pauses prevent accidents," Rob explained. "The machinery needs cool-down time. Workers need positioning time. Rush the process, and—" "I understand your perspective," Marcus interrupted, "but we're not talking about eliminating safety measures. We're talking about right-sizing them, optimizing the balance between safety and productivity." Rob felt his blood pressure rising. There is no balance. Either it's safe or it isn't. "That's exactly the kind of binary thinking that prevents operational excellence," Marcus replied, leaning back in his ergonomic chair. "Modern manufacturing is about finding optimal solutions, not defaulting to conservative approaches." That afternoon, Marcus issued his first operational directive: reduce safety window times by 30% effective immediately. The memo went out plant-wide, formatted in corporate speak that made efficiency sound noble and caution sound cowardly. Danny Kowalski found Rob in the break room that evening after most of the day shift had gone home. "This is bullshit, Rob," Danny said without preamble. "Kid's going to get someone hurt." "I know. So what are we going to do about it?" Rob stared out the window at the parking lot, watching workers walk to their cars. Maria Santos climbed into her Honda Civic, probably heading home to help her daughter with homework. Tyler Jackson unlocked his beat-up Chevy, likely picking up his 5-year-old from daycare. Good people, doing honest work, counting on leadership to keep them safe. "I'm going to document everything," Rob said finally. "Every safety protocol he changes, every corner he cuts. When something goes wrong, and it will, I want a paper trail showing exactly why." Danny nodded grimly. "And if something goes really wrong?" Rob didn't answer immediately. In the Marines, he'd learned that sometimes you follow orders you disagree with, and sometimes you make command decisions that prevent disaster. The trick was knowing when to do which. Let's hope it doesn't come to that. 2 weeks into Marcus Webb's tenure, Rob's worst fears materialized at 2:47 p.m. on a Thursday afternoon. Station 12 handled door panel installation, a process requiring precise timing and careful positioning. Rob's original safety protocol called for a 4-second pause between each installation cycle, time for the pneumatic arms to fully retract, for the worker to position the next panel, for the sensors to confirm everything was clear. Marcus had reduced that pause to 2 seconds. Tyler Jackson was working Station 12 when it happened. The kid had gotten comfortable with the new rhythm, confident in his abilities, trusting the system to protect him. He reached for the next panel a fraction of a second too early. The pneumatic arm, still completing its previous cycle, caught his left hand between the mounting bracket and the door frame. The scream cut through the plant's mechanical hum like a knife. Rob was on the floor within 30 seconds, Danny Kowalski right behind him. Tyler sat on the ground, cradling his hand, face white with shock and pain. 2 fingers were clearly broken, possibly the wrist as well. "Shut down the line," Rob barked. "Call the plant nurse. Danny, get the incident kit." Workers gathered in a concerned circle as the plant nurse arrived. Tyler's hand was swelling rapidly, but he was conscious and coherent. The injury was serious, but not catastrophic. Exactly the kind of accident Rob's original safety windows were designed to prevent. Marcus arrived 10 minutes later, after the ambulance had already been called. "What happened?" he demanded, surveying the scene with the detached concern of an insurance adjuster. "Pneumatic arm caught his hand," Rob explained tersely. He was following the new timing protocols. Marcus frowned, consulting his tablet. The protocols are within industry safety standards. This was operator error. The accusation hung in the air like poison gas. Rob felt every worker on the floor turn to stare at their new plant director, the man who'd just blamed Tyler for an injury caused by Marcus's own policy changes. "That's not how this works," Rob said quietly. "Excuse me? When someone gets hurt in my plant, we don't blame the worker. We examine the system." Marcus's jaw tightened. "It's not your plant anymore, Rob. And the system is fine. The operator made a mistake." Danny Kowalski stepped forward, his weathered face flushed with anger. "Kid's been working that station for 6 months without incident. Only thing that changed was your goddamn timing requirements." "That's enough," Marcus snapped. His voice bounced off the drywall and sent nearby heads popping up like gophers. "Everyone back to work. The line needs to resume production." But Rob was already walking toward the safety station, pulling out the incident report forms. He'd document everything. The timing changes, the lack of proper retraining, the inadequate safety review of the new protocols. Tyler's injury would go into the official record as a workplace accident caused by insufficient safety procedures. Marcus followed him. "What are you doing?" "Filing an incident report. OSHA requires documentation within 24 hours. I'll handle the paperwork." Rob looked up from the forms. "Number, you won't." It was the first time Rob had directly challenged Marcus's authority, and everyone within earshot knew it. The plant director's face flushed red. "I think you're forgetting who's in charge here, Rob." "I'm not forgetting anything. I'm protecting this plant and these workers from the consequences of bad decisions." Marcus stepped closer, lowering his voice to a dangerous whisper. "Submit that report and you're fired. I won't tolerate insubordination." Rob set down his pen and looked Marcus Webb square in the eye. 18 years of service, a spotless safety record, the respect of every worker on the floor, all of it balanced against one moment of choice. He picked up the pen and continued writing. Rob's termination was swift and corporate clean. Marcus called Chuck Peterson, who called HR, who called legal. By 5 p.m. that same Thursday, Rob was cleaning out his locker while a security escort waited nearby. The speed of it all sent a clear message to the entire plant. Challenge the new order at your own peril. But word travels fast in a facility with 847 workers. By quitting time, everyone knew the story. Tyler Jackson injured due to safety cutbacks. Rob Mitchell fired for filing an honest incident report. Marcus Webb protecting his efficiency metrics over worker safety. Danny Kowalski found Rob in the parking lot carrying a cardboard box containing 18 years of accumulated work life. Safety manuals he'd written, performance awards, a coffee mug Linda had given him that read "World's Best Plant Manager." "This is horseshit, Rob," Danny said. "Pure horseshit." "It is what it is," Rob replied, but his voice carried none of its usual calm. For the first time since Danny had known him, Rob Mitchell looked defeated. "Union's going to file a grievance. Wrongful termination. Won't matter. Marcus documented it as insubordination. I directly refused his order not to file the incident report." Danny kicked at the gravel. "So that's it? 18 years? And you're just going to walk away?" Rob loaded the box into his pickup truck, a 2015 F-150 he'd helped build on this very line. "What choice do I have?" The drive home to Lincoln Park took 22 minutes through Detroit's industrial corridors. Rob had made this commute thousands of times, but tonight the familiar landmarks, the Rouge River, the railroad crossings, the neighborhoods where his coworkers lived, felt like he was seeing them for the last time. Linda was in the kitchen when he walked through the door, still in her nursing scrubs from her shift at Henry Ford Hospital. She took one look at his face and the cardboard box and understood immediately. What happened? Rob set the box on the counter and told her everything. The safety changes, Tyler's injury, the confrontation with Marcus, the termination. Linda listened without interruption, her expression growing darker with each detail. "They fired you for protecting someone?" she asked when he finished. "They fired me for insubordination. That's not what I asked." Linda's voice carried the steel that had gotten her through nursing school while pregnant with Sarah, through the tough years when Rob was establishing himself at Ford, through 18 years of marriage to a man whose conscience sometimes made life complicated. Rob slumped into a kitchen chair. "I don't know what we're gonna do, Lynn. Sarah starts at Michigan State in the fall. The mortgage payments. Your student loans from nursing school. Linda sat down across from him, reached over and took his calloused hands in her smaller ones. We'll figure it out. We always do. I'm 42 years old. 18 years at one company. Who's going to hire someone like me? Someone smart enough to recognize what they're getting. That night, Rob lay awake staring at the ceiling, listening to the sounds of his neighborhood. Traffic on Outer Drive, a dog barking 3 houses down, the distant rumble of late shift workers heading home from the Rouge plant. His phone buzzed with text messages from coworkers, expressions of support, outrage at his firing, updates on Tyler's condition. Surgery went well, doctors optimistic about full recovery. But underlying the sympathy was a darker current, fear. If Rob Mitchell, with his record and reputation, could be fired for doing the right thing, what did that mean for everyone else? Marcus Webb's first month as plant director looked impressive in PowerPoint presentations. Efficiency metrics were up 8%. Production time per unit had decreased by 11%. Cost per vehicle showed measurable improvement. To the regional operations team, Dearborn Assembly appeared to be experiencing exactly the kind of modernization Ford had hired Marcus to implement. But spreadsheets don't capture everything. Without Rob's institutional knowledge, small problems began cascading into larger ones. The quality checkpoint sequence Marcus had streamlined started missing defects that previously would have been caught and corrected on the line. Paint adhesion issues made it through final inspection. Electrical harness connections that used to be double-checked now relied on single verification. Danny Kowalski noticed it first. 32 years on the floor had given him an intuitive sense for when systems were stressed. Parts that should fit smoothly required force. Processes that had run like clockwork developed irregular rhythms. Workers started staying late to fix problems that never used to occur. Kids breaking the machine, Danny told Maria Santos during their lunch break. Rob spent 18 years fine-tuning this place. Marcus thinks he can improve it with an iPad and a stopwatch. The first major failure occurred 3 weeks after Rob's termination. A batch of 127 F-150s made it through final quality control with improperly secured fuel lines. The defect was discovered only when a dealer in Phoenix called to report a gasoline smell in a customer's new truck. Ford's investigation revealed that Marcus's streamlined inspection process had eliminated the specific check designed to catch exactly that problem. The recall cost $340,000 in parts, labor, and customer relations. Marcus's response was to implement additional quality checkpoints, essentially restoring procedures Rob had originally designed. But the deeper problem wasn't procedural, it was cultural. Rob had managed through relationship and respect, earning loyalty by demonstrating competence and genuine care for his workers. Marcus managed through metrics and mandates, creating an atmosphere of compliance rather than commitment. Worker morale surveys, conducted quarterly by HR, showed the change immediately. In Rob's final quarter, employee satisfaction had rated 89%. Marcus's first survey came back at 61%, with specific complaints about safety concerns, communication issues, and lack of trust in management. Production errors increased. Minor accidents became more frequent. Workers started calling in sick more often, and 2 veteran employees requested transfers to other Ford facilities. Tyler Jackson returned to work after 6 weeks of recovery, his left hand still in a protective brace. Marcus had offered him a settlement. Medical bills covered, full pay during recovery, no admission of fault. Tyler signed the paperwork because he needed the job, but everyone on the floor understood the real message: shut up and be grateful. The kid was different when he came back. Still hard-working, still eager to learn, but the easy confidence was gone. He approached each task with visible caution, second-guessing movements that used to be automatic. Danny Kowalski, watching Tyler struggle with what should have been routine operations, finally voiced what everyone was thinking. That boy's scared, and scared workers make mistakes. The call came on a Tuesday morning in October, 6 weeks after Rob's termination. He was in his garage working on the transmission of his 1967 Mustang when his cell phone buzzed with a number he didn't recognize. Mr. Mitchell? This is Janet Holbrook from Ford Legal. I need to schedule a meeting with you regarding the Dearborn assembly plant. Rob wiped grease from his hands with a shop rag. He'd been expecting this call, just not this soon. What kind of meeting? There have been some developments. Would you be available tomorrow at 2 p.m.? The meeting will be at the Dearborn corporate offices, conference room 314. Can you tell me what this is about? A pause. We'd prefer to discuss the details in person. Rob knew corporate lawyers speak when he heard it. Something had gone seriously wrong at the plant, wrong enough that Ford's legal team wanted to talk to the former plant manager. He agreed to the meeting. That evening, he called Danny Kowalski. "Ford Legal wants to meet with me tomorrow," Rob said without preamble. "About time," Danny replied. "Place is falling apart, Rob. Yesterday, we had 2 separate line shutdowns because of equipment failures that never would have happened under your watch. Marcus is running around with his tablet, trying to figure out what went wrong, but he doesn't understand the systems well enough to fix them." "How bad is it?" "Bad enough that Chuck Peterson was here yesterday asking a lot of questions." "Bad enough, that word is, they might bring in an outside consulting firm to review operations." Rob felt a grim satisfaction. He'd built those systems to be robust but not idiot-proof. Remove the institutional knowledge, ignore the underlying principles, and even the best designed processes would eventually fail. The meeting at Ford Legal was everything Rob had expected. Sterile conference room, lawyers in expensive suits, documents arranged with military precision. Janet Holbrook was a sharp-eyed woman in her 50s who got straight to the point. "Mr. Mitchell, we're conducting a review of recent operational changes at Dearborn Assembly. Your name has come up repeatedly as someone with unique insight into the facility's systems and procedures." "I worked there for 18 years, Rob replied carefully. "Indeed, and during that time you developed many of the processes currently in use?" "Most of them." Holbrook consulted her notes. "We're particularly interested in your assessment of recent modifications to quality control and safety protocols." Rob leaned back in his chair. This was the moment he'd been preparing for since the day Marcus fired him. He could play it safe, give diplomatic answers, avoid burning bridges, or he could tell the truth. "The modifications are dangerous and counterproductive," he said flatly. "They sacrifice worker safety and product quality for marginal gains in production speed. Any short-term efficiency improvements will be offset by increased accidents, recalls, and employee turnover." "Can you be more specific?" For the next 2 hours, Rob methodically detailed every problematic change Marcus had implemented. The reduced safety windows that led to Tyler's injury, the streamlined quality checks that missed the fuel line defects, the elimination of preventive maintenance schedules that were causing equipment failures. "In your professional opinion," Holbrook asked finally, "what would be required to restore the plant to optimal operational status?" Rob met her gaze directly. "You'd need to reverse most of the changes made in the past 2 months and retrain the workforce on proper procedures. But more importantly, you'd need management that understands manufacturing isn't just about metrics. It's about people and processes working together. And if we asked you to consult on this restoration process?" There it was, the offer Rob had been hoping for and dreading in equal measure. A chance to return to his life's work, but on what terms? "I'd need full operational authority over safety and quality protocols," he said. "No interference from current management. And I'd want a formal acknowledgement that the recent injuries and quality issues resulted from inadequate procedural oversight." Holbrook made notes. Those seem like reasonable requirements. Rob's return to Dearborn Assembly was announced through official channels. Ford Motor Company has retained Robert Mitchell as senior operations consultant to oversee facility optimization and safety protocol enhancement. The corporate language obscured what everyone on the plant floor understood immediately. Rob was back, and Marcus Webb's reign of error was effectively over. The announcement came on a Monday morning in November. By lunch break, word had spread through all 3 shifts. Danny Kowalski found Rob in the quality control office, reviewing incident reports from the past 2 months. "How does it feel to be back?" Danny asked. Rob looked up from a stack of paperwork documenting everything that had gone wrong in his absence. "Like I'm cleaning up someone else's mess. That's exactly what you're doing." The mess was worse than Rob had imagined. Marcus's efficiency improvements had created a cascade of problems. Workers rushing through procedures they'd previously performed methodically. Quality control systems overwhelmed by defects that should never have reached final inspection. Maintenance schedules so disrupted that equipment failures were becoming routine. But the human cost was what bothered Rob most. Tyler Jackson still flinched every time he approached Station 12. Maria Santos had requested a transfer to a different department, claiming she no longer felt safe on the line. 2 veteran workers had retired early rather than continue under Marcus's management style. Rob's first official act was to restore the original safety protocols. He called an all-hands meeting for Tuesday morning, something Marcus had never done, and addressed the entire day shift from the production floor. "I know there's been a lot of changes over the past few months," Rob began. his voice carrying easily over the assembled crowd of workers. "Some of you probably wondered if I'd ever be back. Hell, I wondered the same thing." A few chuckles from the crowd. These were his people, and they knew he was shooting straight with them. "Here's what's going to happen. Effective immediately, we're returning to the safety procedures that kept us incident-free for 14 months. I don't care if it makes us 5% slower. Speed means nothing if people get hurt." Applause rippled through the crowd. Tyler Jackson, standing near the front, nodded his approval. "Second, we're going back to the quality control processes that made this plant the best in the region. Every shortcut taken over the past 2 months gets reversed. We're going to build trucks the right way, the safe way, the way we always did." More applause, stronger this time. "And finally, my door is always open. You see a problem, you come to me directly. You have a safety concern, you speak up immediately. No one, and I mean no one, gets criticized for doing the right thing." The last comment was directed at everyone, but understood by Tyler Jackson as a personal promise. No retaliation for reporting safety issues, no punishment for following proper procedures. Marcus Webb watched the meeting from his office window, his expression unreadable. He'd been effectively sidelined, still plant director in title but stripped of operational authority. Ford Legal had made it clear that any interference with Rob's consultant work would result in immediate termination. The changes Rob implemented weren't dramatic or revolutionary. They were simply a return to principles that had worked for 18 years. Safety first, quality second, efficiency third. But the impact was immediate and measurable. Within 2 weeks, workplace accidents dropped to 0. Quality control metrics began improving as inspection procedures caught problems before they reached final assembly. Equipment reliability increased as proper maintenance schedules were restored. More importantly, the plant's culture began healing. Workers who'd been operating under constant stress and fear started to relax. The easy camaraderie that had characterized Rob's tenure slowly returned. People began suggesting improvements again, confident they'd be heard and respected. Tyler Jackson was one of the first to benefit from the new atmosphere. Rob spent extra time with the kid, helping him regain confidence at Station 12, showing him advanced techniques, rebuilding the mentoring relationship that had been interrupted by Marcus's cost-cutting. "You're a good worker, Tyler," Rob told him one afternoon. "What happened to your hand wasn't your fault. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise." The kid nodded, but Rob could see the doubt still lingering. That was the real cost of bad management. It didn't just break systems, it broke people's confidence in themselves. Danny Kowalski, meanwhile, had become Rob's unofficial lieutenant in the restoration process. 32 years on the floor had given him encyclopedic knowledge of every system, every worker, every quirk of the facility. Together, he and Rob identified and corrected dozens of small problems that had accumulated during Marcus's tenure. "It's like tuning an engine," Danny explained to Tyler during a break. "Each little adjustment seems minor, but together they make the difference between running smooth and running rough." The financial results spoke for themselves. Within a month of Rob's return, production quality had returned to pre-Marcus levels. Customer complaints dropped by 60%. Warranty claims decreased significantly. The plant's efficiency rating, Marcus's obsession, actually improved as workers regained confidence and systems operated smoothly. Chuck Peterson visited the facility in December, ostensibly for a routine review, but actually to see Rob's progress firsthand. He found Rob in the maintenance bay, working with the mechanical team to overhaul a stamping press that had been running poorly for weeks. "Hands-on as always," Chuck observed. "Best way to understand what's really happening," Rob replied, wiping hydraulic fluid from his hands. "You can't manage what you don't understand. The numbers look good, really good. Numbers always look good when you do the work right the first time." Chuck nodded, then asked the question that had really brought him to the plant. "What do you think about making this arrangement permanent? We could use someone with your expertise in a regional role." Rob considered the offer. Regional operations consultant would mean more money, more authority, travel to other facilities. It would also mean less time on the floor, less direct contact with the work and workers he cared about. "Let me think about it," he said. Marcus Webb's downfall wasn't dramatic. There were no shouting matches, no public confrontations, no spectacular failures. Instead, he experienced the corporate equivalent of being slowly frozen out. Responsibilities gradually shifted to other managers, meetings that proceeded without him, decisions made by committees he wasn't invited to join. His MBA training had prepared him for rapid advancement, aggressive targets, and performance-based rewards. It hadn't prepared him for the patient, methodical erosion of authority that occurs when results consistently fail to match promises. The final blow came in January during Ford's quarterly operations review. Marcus had prepared extensively for the presentation, armed with charts showing improved production metrics during his initial weeks as plant director. But the regional executives had done their homework too. "Mr. Webb," one of them began, "can you explain the $340,000 recall cost during your first month?" Marcus had practiced this answer. "The recall was caused by a quality control gap that we immediately addressed. We've implemented additional inspection procedures to prevent similar issues." "Inspection procedures that were eliminated during your efficiency optimization?" "Yes, but..." "And the workplace injury that occurred 3 days after you reduced safety protocols?" Marcus felt the room growing colder. "That was operator error. We've since provided additional training on safety procedures that had been modified without proper consultation." The questions continued for 20 minutes, each one more pointed than the last. Marcus realized he was being systematically dismantled by executives who had clearly spoken with Rob Mitchell and understood exactly what had happened at Dearborn Assembly. The meeting ended with Marcus being offered a choice: voluntary resignation with a severance package, or a formal performance review that would likely result in termination for cause. He chose resignation, effective immediately. Rob heard about Marcus's departure from Danny Kowalski, who'd heard it from Chuck Peterson's assistant, who'd heard it during a phone call she'd accidentally been patched into. "Kid's gone," Danny announced with visible satisfaction. "Cleaned out his office this morning." Rob felt no joy at the news. Marcus Webb had been a problem to be solved, not an enemy to be defeated. His failures had hurt real people. Tyler Jackson's broken fingers, Maria Santos's transfer request, the dozens of workers who'd spent months wondering if their jobs were safe. "What happens now?" Tyler asked. He'd been listening to the conversation while adjusting torque settings on his station. "Now we do what we've always done," Rob replied. "We build trucks." But privately, Rob knew things had changed permanently. Ford had learned the cost of replacing institutional knowledge with management theory. The plant's workers had learned they couldn't count on corporate leadership to protect them. And Rob himself had learned that sometimes walking away from a fight is the only way to win it. Spring returned to Dearborn with the kind of hopeful energy that characterizes fresh starts. Rob had officially accepted Ford's offer to become regional operations consultant, a newly created position that gave him authority over safety and quality protocols at 3 assembly plants. The promotion came with a $40,000 salary increase and a $25,000 signing bonus, enough to secure Sarah's college tuition and put the family's finances back on solid ground. But the real victory wasn't financial. It was cultural. Tyler Jackson had not only regained his confidence at Station 12, he'd become one of Rob's most capable apprentices, learning advanced troubleshooting techniques and beginning to mentor newer workers himself. The kid's injury had left him with slightly reduced mobility in 2 fingers, but he'd adapted his techniques and was actually more efficient than before. "Pain makes you careful," Tyler explained to Rob one afternoon. "Careful makes you better." Danny Kowalski, meanwhile, had been promoted to shift supervisor, a recognition of his 32 years of experience and his role in maintaining morale during the difficult months under Marcus's management. At 56, Danny finally had the title and authority his expertise deserved. "Never thought I'd make supervisor," Danny confided to Rob. "Always figured the job would go to someone with more education." "Education's fine," Rob replied, "but there's no substitute for knowing how things really work." Maria Santos had withdrawn her transfer request and was back to her old, cheerful efficiency and quality control. The department she'd once threatened to leave now operated with the kind of quiet competence that made problems disappear before they became crises. The Dearborn plant's performance metrics told the story of Rob's restoration. Accident rates at 0 for 6 consecutive months. Quality ratings the highest in Ford's North American operations. Employee satisfaction scores back above 85%. Production efficiency had actually improved from Marcus's numbers, proving that Rob's philosophy, "do it right, do it safe, speed will follow," worked in practice as well as theory. But the most significant change was harder to quantify. The plant felt different. Workers moved with confidence, suggested improvements freely, took pride in their craftsmanship. The place hummed with the kind of purposeful energy that comes when people believe their work matters and their expertise is valued. Rob's success hadn't gone unnoticed in Ford's corporate hierarchy. Chuck Peterson had hinted at further promotions, possibly a move to Dearborn headquarters, maybe even a role in Ford's new electric vehicle initiative. The offers were flattering, but Rob wasn't tempted. He'd found his sweet spot. Senior enough to influence policy, experienced enough to solve complex problems, but still close enough to the floor to remember why the work mattered. One evening in May, Rob stayed late to finish reviewing safety protocols for the new F-150 Lightning production line. The plant was quiet, most of the day shift having gone home hours earlier. He walked the empty production floor, checking systems, noting details, maintaining the kind of intimate familiarity with the facility that had made him irreplaceable. His phone buzzed with a text from Linda. "Dinner's getting cold." Sarah called. She made Dean's list. Rob smiled, pocketing his phone. Sarah's success at Michigan State represented everything he'd fought for: family security, the next generation's opportunities, the payoff for 18 years of showing up and doing the work right. As he headed for the exit, Rob paused at Station 12, where Tyler Jackson's toolbox still sat exactly where he'd learned to arrange it. The kid would be back tomorrow morning, ready to build more trucks, to learn more techniques, to pass his knowledge on to the next apprentice who'd need guidance. The cycle would continue: experienced workers training newcomers, institutional knowledge passed down through careful mentorship, systems maintained by people who understood not just how they worked, but why they mattered. Rob Mitchell had learned something important during his brief exile. Sometimes the best way to protect what you've built is to let others discover they can't function without it. He hadn't sabotaged Marcus Webb or orchestrated his downfall. He'd simply removed his expertise and let reality teach the lessons that PowerPoint presentations couldn't. Walking to his truck in the parking lot, Rob reflected on the cost of that lesson. Tyler's broken fingers would heal completely, but the kid would carry the caution forever. The plant had lost 2 good workers to early retirement. Marcus Webb's career had been derailed, possibly permanently. But the alternative, watching 18 years of safety culture erode under incompetent management, would have cost far more. Sometimes the price of doing nothing is higher than the price of taking a stand. Rob's phone rang as he started the truck. Linda's voice filled the cab through the Bluetooth speaker. "How late are you going to be?" "Heading home now." "Sorry, got caught up reviewing the lightning protocols." "Sarah wants to show you her Dean's List certificate when you get home. She's proud of herself." She should be. We all should be. Driving through the familiar streets of Dearborn, past the neighborhoods where 3 generations of Ford workers had raised their families, Rob thought about legacy. Not the corporate kind measured in profit margins and efficiency ratings, but the human kind. Skills passed on, principles maintained, young people given chances to prove themselves. Tyler Jackson would make a fine supervisor someday, maybe even a plant manager. Danny Kowalski's experience would guide another decade of workers through the complexities of modern manufacturing. Maria Santos would continue catching quality problems before they became customer complaints. And somewhere, in some other plant, another Marcus Webb was probably implementing efficiency improvements without understanding the systems he was changing. Maybe that plant had its own Rob Mitchell to push back, to document the problems, to protect the workers who couldn't protect themselves. Maybe it didn't. Rob pulled into his driveway next to Linda's Honda, noting that the garage light was on. Sarah's car was there too. She must have driven down from East Lansing for the weekend. Through the kitchen window, he could see his family moving around, preparing dinner, living the life his 18 years at Ford had made possible. He sat in the truck for a moment, engine ticking as it cooled, feeling the satisfaction of work well done and battles hard fought. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. The Lightning production line, training programs for the next generation of workers, meetings with executives who thought they understood manufacturing but had never stood on a factory floor for 8 hours straight. But tonight, Rob Mitchell was exactly where he belonged, home with his family in a community that valued his work, having proven once again that experience and integrity could triumph over credentials and politics. The foreman's gambit had paid off. 6 months later, Rob received a LinkedIn message from Marcus Webb. The former plant director had found work at a consulting firm in Chicago, helping companies optimize operational efficiency. His profile picture showed him in a sharp suit, standing in front of a whiteboard covered with business terminology. The message was brief. "Rob, hope you're doing well. I've had time to reflect on our time together at Dearborn. I think we could have worked better as a team if circumstances had been different. Wish you success in your new role." Rob read it twice, then deleted it without responding. Some lessons were too expensive to learn twice, and some bridges were better left unbuilt. In the margin of his production report that evening, Rob wrote a note to himself. Systems are only as good as the people who understand them. People are only as good as the leaders who respect them. It wasn't the kind of wisdom they taught in business school, but it was the kind that kept factories running and workers safe and families fed. In the end, that was enough. If you enjoyed this story about workplace justice and the triumph of experience over arrogance, please hit that like button and let me know in the comments what you thought. And if you haven't subscribed yet, subscribe and ring the notification bell to get alerts about new stories just like this one. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.